Hey, I'm Richard Gayton, and I want to welcome you all to Halo, Love and Country. And we normally have an LGBTQ guest on with someone from the majority community talking about the risks that we take being in the military. But today we're going to depart from that topic a little bit. We're very pleased to have Mitch McDonald with us, who is not a member of the LGBTQ community, but we have given him a membership card as an honorary member. So welcome to you, Mitch. Mitch is an actor. You can catch him in Love and Country as the first sergeant. He does an excellent job in that supporting role. He's a political activist. I just made that up, but I think it's true. And he's the producer of our show. So, like I said, normally we have folks from the LGBTQ community. Interesting, we had a great deal of trouble finding anyone that was even responding to our request to be on the podcast. And what Mitch, I'll let him speak for himself, but what I'm guessing is that people are keeping their heads down with the Trump administration coming in and what appears to be a lot of direct oppression and repression of minority people of all kinds, minority communities of all kinds. So I'm gonna let Mitch introduce himself a little bit more, and then we're going to start a conversation about risk taking in the political environment currently, and wherever else we go. So, welcome, Mitch.
Hi. So it's actually kind of it's a weird spot that we're in. As a new show, it's completely possible that we're just far enough under the radar that we're not getting attention because people don't know who we are. But I find that difficult to accept as the answer in the face of not getting any response of any kind. Not even a polite, "Hey, we'll get back to you." We're not even seeing that. People are simply in full withdrawal. Not withdrawal, turtling. Everybody has their head down and they're trying not to be seen. Even the people you would expect who most want to be seen, the people who in the past have been most present, we just don't have them. And it's confusing and a little scary and very weird.
Let me ask you, Mitch, okay, you're a black man in Arkansas. What is that like for you?
Is an interesting question. Where do you go with that? Okay, so I've almost never experienced the downside of being black in America. My parents lived through it. My parents came up through it. My father was raised in Mississippi, in a generation where a black man was expected to, even in his Sunday best on his way to church, he was expected to be in possession of work gloves so that if some white person called him aside to do something, he was expected to do it. My mother came up in a factory worker family that had been chased out of, I believe it was Kentucky the generation before, lost a lot of land, lost a lot of property. Sort of the family sort of split. Some went to Chicago, some went to North Carolina. So, in the situation in North Carolina wasn't as severe, but you were still black, you were still less than. And so I was raised by parents who understood how bad it could be, and told us, you're not less than, you'll never be less than. Work to your potential, do your best, and refuse to be sidelined and not acknowledged.
Where did you go to? Where did you go to elementary school and middle school? And
Fort Bragg, North Carolina, is right next to Fayetteville, North Carolina. So pretty much everybody in Fayetteville is in some way associated to the military. Somebody in your family is in the military. The city wouldn't exist if Fort Bragg weren't there.
what was it? What was it like for you to go to school there?
Everybody was there. Everybody was there. So it's the same situation. There are racists, but it's not an overtly racist system. You could expect to get a fair shake. The options were available.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, and that was sort of what I was saying. It's not that I've never experienced racism. It's that I wasn't raised in it. So my experience of eventually coming to Arkansas was the same as what I'd had in Fayetteville, except in Arkansas, there is a very subtle undertone of this could become violent that I never experienced anywhere else. I lived in a small community in the hills above here. I'm in Fort Smith, Arkansas now, and it's a little town called Rudy. It was one of the first places I lived after I got here. You come into the town, there's a waterway called the Frog Bayou. And there's a bridge that goes over the Frog Bayou. And if you're on the not in town side of the Frog Bayou, 2 years before I moved into the town, there was a sign on that bridge that said, "Don't let the sun set on your black ass in this town." It was a sundown town. That's what they were called. So that was 1992, 1993, 1994. It wasn't that long ago. They were putting in 911 numbers at the time that I moved in. The mayor was walking around town giving everyone their 911 addresses, and he made a point of letting me know that if anybody gave me a hard time, I could just come to his house and he'd settle any issues that there might be. God love him, not that I trusted that man any further than I could throw him. If the mob were coming for me, I have no doubt he would happily hand me over. It made a lot more sense to just make sure the shotgun was loaded, try to make a call and hope for some help. But the police who came through that area were not much better than the more rude people. And then that wasn't even the majority of the people, because that town is full of Native American folk and white folk, and there were a few Hispanic folk here and there. I didn't ever see any other black folks during the time that I lived there. But it was a lightly mixed community, and you would have expected folks to be respectful of each other, which they largely were. You stay out of my way, I'll stay out of your way. Again, Harrison, Arkansas, hour and a half from here, is a well-known Ku Klux Klan town. I just did a short film there a month ago. It has toned itself down a bit, but I'm not expecting that to stay the case. Nigger this, nigger that. You hear it from time to time. It's not regular. It's not often, but it pops up. And every minority experiences some version of that. But that was a long story to just say that I have been very, very fortunate, and I've experienced very little of it.
But I'm hearing that there's a kind of an expectation with you of violence. There's an assumption that will eventually come, or that might come. Is that accurate?
Well, yes. I mean, the last Klan rally we had in town was probably about 10 years ago. But I know perfectly well that, again, in the communities right above here, Rudy, Chester, 30, 45 minutes from here, Nazi flags flying in front of people's houses, Stormfront crap, Klan insignia. I can't say that I've seen any of that stuff actively in the city of Fort Smith, But there are lots and lots of Confederate flags. There's 2 on the block right behind me.
And what would
And
the Confederate flag mean to you in Arkansas? What would that mean?
well, it's not so much what it means; it's what it suggests. Because I honestly know there are people out there still riding the culture not hate bandwagon. This is part of what this country used to be, and blah blah blah. And those people are just too thick to recognize the ugliness that comes along with that flag. And I'm not going to argue with them. They may not be smart, they may not be savvy, but they are not necessarily bad people. They're not genuinely mean or hateful. But if you see that flag, you know that there is the direct possibility that they are mean and hateful and are just waiting for an excuse. And under the current administration, that excuse gets a little closer to the surface every day. I think we are very fortunate that President Trump is very, very good at pitting people against each other, even in his own administration. He needs people to be bowing to him, which means he needs them not talking to each other. And if they are fighting with each other, that gives him the opportunity to twist their needs into his needs and better control them. And we're seeing that every day with the whole, oh, I'm going to make your egg prices go lower. Yeah, and every move he's made is sending the economy closer to tanking so that he and his oligarch buddies can buy what's left of this country when the economy explodes.
So if he can get, or whoever's with him can get us all fighting with each other, that kind of works for him, doesn't it? As if he wants to, and which he has done, take on a more authoritarian presidency, maybe we don't watch him so closely or hold him responsible. I thought it was interesting that he got the legal system all fighting within itself and delayed, and then finally used it to escape the consequences for most of his actions, other than the 30 felonies.
Yeah, state crimes.
Yeah,
right. And so the question becomes, how much damage is done, and how long will it take to unwind that damage? Once you've taken people's rights away, they're very hard to just put back. Somebody has to be willing and ready to put them back. And as you were just saying, with the courts in the current circumstances, we can't guarantee that somebody's going to step in and go, okay, the last X number of judicial decisions were so far from any judicial standard, they need to be reviewed, and rather, which is that's part of what they rely on. We're all out here trying to follow the rules while they're busily cutting the throat of anything that looks like it will be in their way. It's like calling 911. If somebody's in the house threatening to shoot you, you can dial 911, but you're going to be dead before a cop gets there. That is what they're relying on. The system will not come into play before the damage is already done.
Okay, so let's take that to where you are now. Where you live now, if you called 911, if somebody was coming after you and you called 911, what would happen, do you think? If it was a white man with a flag coming to your house, let's say.
Yeah, no, we're not at a stage where the law isn't still in play. I know if I call the police, they're going to show up. If someone were threatening me, the real question becomes, how much of an excuse do they have, and how much of it do the police believe? I mean, if they're in my house threatening me, then I have 2 clubs, 2 knives, 3 swords within it, just in this room.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody comes through that door, they're being dealt with. And I just have to hope that when the police arrive, they go, oh, well, that was a completely legal defense of your property, as opposed to, well, you should have retreated first, or you should have asked them to leave and then waited for us to arrive, as opposed to leaving us this damaged lump that used to be a person. But I don't worry that the authorities aren't going to respond. I only worry that
how they're going to see the situation whether
Yes.
they're going to blame you or
Yes, exactly.
hold you
Exactly.
responsible because you're black.
No, and not because I'm black. Not because I'm black. Okay, in my area, in this little town,
Mm-hmm.
the police are functional and trustworthy. My concern is that when state rules start coming down, changing how they're intended to act, they will um, they won't know what to do. They won't stand on the side of what they know is legal and right. They will simply follow the instructions sent down from Little Rock.
So on some level, at least in your emotions, you do feel threatened to be armed in your house, to be armed in your car. There is that risk factor that we're always talking about. What could happen? Maybe are you up to talking about what happened when we were filming Love and Country? Uh, you were doing production management with us.
Well, okay, so we were in Harrisburg, the northeast side of the state. Um, Very small town, and um, I don't know that I saw a black person who was not part of the production in that town the whole time we were there. But while we
I
were
didn't.
there, I was followed. Maybe not every day, but often. Because I mean, I had to drive back and forth and through and around town, and they were just present at a level that made very little sense for um, for a town that size. They were just always way too close to me. Uh,
And then you mean the police?
yes, yes, the police.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I only got pulled the once, but they had no cause to have pulled me that one time. I think they just wanted to get a look at me. They wanted an excuse. I felt harassed. I didn't feel in danger. And around here, I don't even feel harassed. The police around here know who I am. I am loud and I am out front. I'm not an activist, but I am present at a lot of social events. I go to city council meetings. I go to school board meetings. I am a known factor around here. So, I don't worry about the police. I know that I can talk to them when I need to. Whether, even if it's just in a casual fashion, I
No problem where you live. And I just as a reference, we were shooting on location out in the countryside around Harrisburg and down from, I don't know, up or down from near, not too far from Jonesboro. Sometimes we would have, oh, I don't know, 7 or 8 cars, or we were all over the place all the time, driving out into the forest, onto the rice fields. We weren't an all white cast, but nearly, and all the drivers were white. None of us was ever stopped. None of us was ever followed that I know of. I never saw a police officer the whole time I was there. We were shooting for 30 days. Harassment is a kind of prelude to something that might hurt you. When an authority like a police officer, or if we were in the military, we were in a military where the military government was, just the fact of being followed, just the fact of being stopped, it creates fear in people. And
yeah, and
yeah,
that absolutely applies to me. I see police lights. They don't have to be anywhere near me or even intended for me, and I get a moment of okay,
you're on guard.
yeah, yeah. But that's been taught to me from a very early age. Watch yourself. And I have to preface that by saying I was a terrible child. I was constantly running afoul of the law when I was young. Um,
When you were running afoul of the law, did anybody hurt you?
oh no, no,
No.
no. And I mean, realistically, there have only been two circumstances that potentially went past harassment. I have always been an easy target because I've always been way too loud and way too out front. I am always a known factor, so I have to be careful of what I do. And there's only been two circumstances where I was ever in a situation where I felt like someone was coming after me from a police position. One was a cop who he knew that my paperwork in my car wasn't right, and I got pulled by a completely different police officer who I admitted immediately, my paperwork isn't right. Here's why my paperwork isn't right. This is what I'm trying to do to get my paperwork right. And he pulled up while I was talking to that officer, bailed out of his car, and immediately started in about if he's saying this, that, or the other thing, that his paperwork is right or he just doesn't have it, he's lying, take him now. And I hadn't done that. I was completely honest with the officer about what I was doing. And there was one time that I was arrested, failure to pay fines, which happened a lot because I was congenitally broke. And I mouthed off to the duty officer because my argument was always, you guys know where I live. If I'm behind, you could have always sent me some notification that I missed a payment or I'd forgotten to do something. You always know where to find me. You could just send a letter and I would know that I owed you money. Instead, you show up and you arrest me. I didn't ask to be here, and I'm not in the mood for your bullshit or your rules. And the duty officer was that far from smacking me. He was that far from it. And the only thing that saved me was that there was a female officer passing through at the exact moment that exchange happened, and she stepped in, basically with the, hey, what's going on here? He was ready to slam me through the floor and deal with me. And, he's like, he's mouthing off, he's this, he's that. And she's like, him, no, he's polite. No, that's a misunderstanding. Young man, go over there. And it just, and instantly diffused. But those are the only times in my life that I've ever been,
well, let me give you
knowledge to be on the receiving end of incoming from the police.
Okay, let's contrast here a little bit. Okay, so I was a white kid, obviously, growing up in a segregated neighborhood in Long Beach, not rich yet, but that community was headed for the rich community, but we were well off. No black people, no brown people. I don't know. It was just lily white. And I was a little shit. And I did all kinds of stuff with my buddies. And one time we were playing on a construction site, and we weren't supposed to be there, I guess. And we were throwing stuff around and making noise, and the neighbors called the police. And I took off like a rabbit. I was about 13, ran from the police, jumped over a wall, hid from them, finally ended up back home. And my buddies in the meantime had told the police where I lived, and they just talked to my father. Just talked to him a little bit. He talked to me a little bit. He said, son, you really shouldn't do that. And I don't remember anything else happening. And then another experience, we collected Christmas trees at Christmas time, at the end of Christmas time, and we created this huge bonfire in the lot next door. Huge, dangerous thing. Just don't ask me why we had the freedom to do that, but we did. The fire department came by, waved. The police came by, waved. My father by then was there. He had me go get a garden hose just in case. And everything was fine. Not to mention the time I stole a comic book in the store and got caught. And, all of and usually this stuff I was pulling, the police never came, or if they did, they handled it in some other way other than taking me anywhere. They didn't even seem to want to talk to me. And I often say if the police had been there and watching closely, like you're talking, I would have definitely been in the juvenile system. I won't tell you the rest of the stuff.
My story would be exactly like your story. I got away with so much stuff. There was so much stuff. People just said, Please be a good boy. Don't do that anymore. So many times I was cut slack. So many times I was cut loose. I did not have to deal with the system as a lot of Black America had to. And when I say Black America, I actually do mean kids I went to school with. There were things I know people went down for that weren't me. There were other kids that I knew who spent time in juvenile for the same sort of stuff that I did. They just got caught, or they got caught by the wrong police officer. I have been allowed to walk away. I have been cut loose. I have been brought home.
Why do you think it didn't happen to you? Why did you escape that? Why did you escape the police?
Because my parents fought for me and I was white enough.
You acted white enough.
Yeah, I was always a chameleon. I was always part of every group. I fit in with everybody just well enough. I was one of the punks. I was one of the heads. I hung out with the skaters. I was part of everything, so it wasn't, and I knew to respect authority, even if I didn't like it. Like, I understood there are limits to what you can get away with. Even if I pushed that line. But I think, so I guess that's what in the long run, I guess that's what we're coming back to. A lot of what is on the cusp of happening isn't about whether or not you're obeying the rules. The rules are being twisted so that even as a law-abiding citizen, your existence is about to potentially become criminal. We've got a Congress that's talking about passing bathroom laws that will allow the police to examine your genitals to be sure you're in the bathroom you're supposed to be in.
They would enjoy that, I'll bet.
Well, and the sad part of that is there are, unfortunately, a lot of very some degree masculine looking women in this country who don't deserve to have somebody decide they don't belong in the bathroom they're in. But if somebody's uncomfortable, they could find themselves on the receiving end of an examination from a cop who it's absolutely not his job to be making that decision, telling you to drop your pants so he can see that what you've got in there meets his expectations. And then even then, let's pretend he looks in, woman A's pants and sees what appears to be a vagina. That in no way speaks to the fact that she may not have had the appropriate bottom surgery and is living quite comfortably in her life, that her ID shows her to be the woman that she is. But it doesn't change the fact that she just had to drop trowel in front of some cop. Even if he can't take it any further than that, that's I cannot imagine that humiliation. Yeah, I mean, because that is slavery. That is being controlled by outside forces that have nothing to do with you on an extremely intimate level. And
the whole trans issue is, I lack so much knowledge about it. I don't. I'm trying to learn, and
the people making our laws lack basic knowledge of human sexuality, of human biology, of social issues that go beyond last year, the last 10 years. There is so much information our legislators don't have and don't care to know. Too many of them are driven by their religious beliefs that have nothing to do with the society the rest of us have to live in. Too many of them are driven by false information passed on to them by people who know even less than they do, but they make it sound good. They're turning the freaking frogs gay. Get out of here with that crap.
Well, we're asked whether you're trans, whether you're Black, whether you're still a gay man. I mean, certainly growing up as a little boy and as a teenager, I knew I was bisexual, and I absolutely had to fit in. Absolutely had to. That's the risk avoidance behavior. That's the way we deal with risk, is we act like we're someone we're not. Our trans people have been asked to, if they feel like a woman, but they look like a man. They got to be men. They got to fit in. If you're black, you better make the white people happy. Carry your gloves with you. It's like, wow. But that's the way we deal with risk. That's the way I dealt with risk. I came out very late in life, and I was a chameleon. I was leading two lives, and I got good at doing that. The present political climate feels like we're asked to go back to that now. Go back to being chameleons. Just fit in. I'm not even sure it's the majority anymore, but it's who's in power, what they want. For one, I'm not good at living that way anymore.
Right, and which goes back to where we started this discussion. So back in 2010, I forget, when we went through what I call the first wave with the Chick-fil-A situation. That was what got me started in working with the local gay community. Standing up, being out, being seen, being heard. And the reason I stepped away from working with the local LGBT group was that I felt like they were pushing too hard, like they were going out of their way to create a situation where there was going to be a conflict, because they wanted to go to the communities that absolutely had expressed open distaste, open hatred, and they wanted to go right in their front door and be like, we're here. And I was scared to death for them. And eventually I had to just step back, because I was like, you're going to get hurt, and I'm not going to be able to do anything about it except get hurt with you. And I am not okay with that. So I retreated. And now I turn around and I look out here now, and they've all retreated. That exact same group of people who in 2008, 2009 were begging you to make the mistake of questioning them, begging you to make the mistake of saying there's something about you that's wrong, so that they could correct you and let you know exactly how backward your thinking was. Those people they're gone. I cannot find a single one of them. I can't get any of them to have a conversation on any level, no matter how subtle. They're all gone. And I am, you cannot tell other people how to protect themselves. You can't tell other people how to resist. You can't tell other people how to protest. Thank you, Roy Woods Jr. You can't tell other people how to.
Well, something has happened, which is there's been tremendous progress on civil rights for Black folks. I don't know how to assess how much, because I'm not Black, but there's been tremendous progress on civil rights for gay folks. And so it can be tempting, at least from my community's point. I can't speak for my community either, but I can say that we did get something. I'm allowed to marry. I'm supposedly protected against discrimination in work in many places, not everywhere, but many places. Our local Fullerton police won't go anymore and pick up gay couples sitting in the park with each other. Maybe that won't happen anymore. It doesn't seem to be happening. It doesn't seem to, things seem pretty calm around me. Why why speak out when we've got someone like our president right now? Why make yourself a target,
Because they're not coming. People are really good right now, especially the Trump supporters, about, oh, you're just fear mongering. They're not doing the thing that you said that they're doing. No, they're not doing it yet, but they have said they're going to do it.
They've always done exactly what they said they were going to do.
Yeah. And the fact that they're not there yet doesn't mean they're not going to get there. And you have to start dealing with it on the assumption that it's coming. that, I mean, you can say they're not going to do it, but they thought about it because they thought enough about it to say it.
Well, if
You
you
know,
look at their record, they do what they say they're going to do. I
well,
mean,
yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I'm just
yeah.
saying that, on the other side of it, you can't just pretend that because they haven't, uh, um, you have to give them credit for the imagination to have come up with the idea. And then it just becomes a question of how long is it going to take them to figure out how to achieve it. That was part of the 2025 plan. The whole point was we've always wanted to do these things, and now we figured out how to do it. So here's our list. And so now it's really just a question of how long will it be for them to achieve those goals, and they're well on their way. Ending the Department of Education was part of it. Ending the IRS was part of it. A national ban on abortion was part of it. Um, uh, Cutting back on who can vote was part of it. And all of those things are happening. The House already has it's House Resolution 8. Hold on, okay, I'm looking at my notes. House Resolution 899 is for ending the Department of Education. House Resolution 78 is for a national abortion bill. Um, there are multiple bills to cut back on who can and can't vote, and some of those are backdooring it. They're trying to find ways to, basically by saying your ID has to match your birth certificate. Okay, well then every woman who got married and doesn't have that information anymore. It's like, yes, I have a birth certificate. It has my maiden last name on it. I'm married now, or I got married and then I got divorced, but I never went back to my maiden name. There's no ID that matches those two things. I can't vote. I can't vote. Um,
A lot of
HR 5 to end the IRS. HR 28 to make sure that anyone who was born male doesn't play in a female sport. Which, and as multiple people have been pointing out, in the United States of America, that is literally 5 kids. They're trying to push a federal law on 5 kids.
crazy, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to talk about fear mongering? There you go.
Well, and there's the best way to scare people is, what they've talked about is flooding the zone. Just throw all this stuff out there, do all these initiatives very quickly, and so people are,
Yes, yeah.
blindsided by it, and so you don't know which one to take on. So you turtle,
Right. Well,
you know.
yes, I remember originally hearing that from Steve Bannon, and he immediately put it forward as these Democrats are so stupid they won't know how to handle it. It's not about being stupid. Every one of those points is something that needs to be addressed. And if you hit us with 3 things this week, it's not about being too stupid to handle it. It's about being overwhelmed with, I have to handle this one because the legal system says I have to handle this one. And then this one's also in the process. And this one is in the process. And we only have so many resources. So we got to focus on this one. But then next week, you're going to give us 3 more things. We still haven't completely processed through these 3. It has nothing to do with being stupid. It has everything to do with when you play by the rules, the system gets overwhelmed very, very quickly. They're not playing by the rules.
Do you
They're
think
using the rules.
do you think the opposition should play by the?
No, no more so than the conservative Republican fraction of America does. If anything, what Schumer should have learned over the last 12 years that he absolutely has not is how to dig in your heels. Uh, we are constantly trying to find ways to make deals, and we're just gonna, I know I know you want America to
We
move
can talk
forward.
our way through it. We
Yeah,
can
yeah,
negotiate.
yeah. We can
Liberals
negotiate.
love to talk and love to we can handle this with just communication. Being a psychologist, I really believe that shit. And a lot of times you can handle things with communication. You can only handle them by taking action. I was watching Selma the other day. That movie,
Yes.
yeah, about Martin Luther King, and um, trying to be reasonable, trying to communicate, trying to negotiate. and finally
Right.
just having to march. And
Well, and the thing that all of those movies tend to leave out is they forget that for every, you can have an arm that talks. There's a reason you have ambassadors, and there's a reason you have armies. Your ambassadors are there to talk, and your armies are there to act. We had lots of people on the conversation side, but the only reason the conversation side worked was because people were scared to death of Black Panthers. They were scared to death of rioting Black people. They wanted to have the conversation to limit the action. And Schumer and his crew have allowed themselves to be ground to a halt because they want to talk, but there is absolutely no threat of action. And all they really need to do is just stop, the same way the Republicans did when Biden was in office, the same way they did when Obama was in office, rather the same way the Republicans did it then. Just stop. Don't help them do anything.
don't vote yes for anything they want to do.
Dig in your feet, drag the process out to the point that the bill dies, wait for the next one come along and do it again. It's the same
But
stuff they did.
we're coming up to this funding the government deadline on March 14th.
Yes.
And I hate to see the federal employees be, laid off without pay. That bothers me. But it seems like that we should just say no to that too. And anything, because the Republicans are just using that to advance more stuff in their agenda.
Yes.
It just seems like the time is to just dig in your heels and say no. And action and total inaction seems to me passive resistance, active resistance. Well, gay people love to talk. Okay, we can communicate. But during the AIDS crisis, it was ACT UP,
Yes.
that group that threw blood, that did sit-ins, that got arrested. Those are the people that made communication possible. Staying in the closet and not saying, one of the most brilliant things that was ever suggested was everybody at every level come out to your children, come out to your parents, come out to your world, all around you. And pretty soon everybody's out. And now it becomes really, really hard. But that was action, little, small, direct action that just turned into everything. And I think what's time now is for people, and I don't know what form it will take, but it's time for people who don't want an authoritarian government to take action and to take the risk. And I don't know how much risk this little podcast is, but it's to me it's a small risk, but it's maybe one that 1 million people can take now, is to begin to speak out and to look for ways that they can take action at a local level.
And I don't consider this to be a small risk because this is going on record. And people, and there's really nothing you can do worse than going on record. Occasionally we can grab up one of these tight ass Republicans and point back and go, remember when you said this? Remember when you said this? It's a little easier now because it's no longer about, well, it was written in a newspaper, but they misconstrued what I said. No. Here's you speaking out loud. I can see your face. I can hear your words. Nothing has been changed. There's the question. There's your answer. You said that. So, being on the record is one of the worst things you can do when you don't want to have to pay a penalty. And right
But they're
now,
going to use our broadcast to put us in the gulag. And so
exactly.
So
But
we'll share a cell. What the heck?
Well, as far as gulags go, unfortunately, it was just earlier this week. There was an FBI agent, Marcus Allen. He's a whistleblower, basically speaking out against the way that the FBI their administration is dragging their feet and trying to punish agents. And he outright said it earlier this week. He just said, get ready for the Civil War. The government is being co-opted and they're going to come for you. And the best thing you can do is to have enough food to get by, the tools to fight, and neighbors who will stand beside you. That's actually not a quote. That's a paraphrasing of his overall point. He's not the only one saying it, but he's the first one I've seen willing to just say outright, this government, as a member of this government, he's the first person I've seen who's just outright willing to say you can't trust them anymore, and you have to be willing to do what you have to do. They're cutting back on the benefits that we have paid into. They're going to start cutting back. They're going to start carving in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP benefits. People are about to become sick and hungry with nowhere to go and no way to get around it, because unless you happen to be fortunate enough to live in a community where there are doctors who will work, just like, okay, screw it, Medicaid's out the window, let's all come up with a new plan, and the odds are not strong on that. Doctors going back to working for, okay, bring me 2 chickens, bring me a pallet of vegetables. I got to pay my staff, but they'll take a chicken and some vegetables in payment too. They'll figure, there's enough money that they can figure out how to pay their electric bill, and maybe we'll figure out something about the mortgage. We're about to be in a situation where we have to drop back and either fight or have nothing. Like I was saying, early on, when they crash the economy, they'll be the ones with enough money to buy everything. We'll have nothing. I mean, if you have $400 billion, which is an insane number, but if you're sitting on $400 billion and it suddenly turns into $20 billion, it's still $20 billion. You can get anything you want with $20 billion. And if that means buying up all of our homes and all of our businesses and all of our national forests and all of our waterways, they will absolutely do that, because they're already in the process of making it so that they can do those things.
Well, that's what happened in 2008. Remember, during the big meltdown here in California, these huge corporations came in and bought up houses.
Yes.
Just at the bottom of the houses lost half their value. They were buying them left and right. Thousands and thousands of houses were bought and were purchased or in foreclosure or whatever were snapped up by these corporations. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's awkward because, like, okay, my current list is Pepsi, Google, Amazon, Paramount. Well, no. Okay. And we're only talking about DEI at this point. Because like I haven't done business with Amazon in forever. But Pepsi, Google, Paramount, which I was surprised to find out about, Warner Brothers, which I was surprised to find out about, had to sell my stock in Bank of America. I use PayPal for business on a regular basis, so I have to stop using them. Disney, who saw that coming? And like right now, doing what we're doing right now, we're on a Google platform. We don't have a solid option for somewhere else to broadcast, edit, record this show, because the system we have set in place relies on Google. It relies on Chrome.
So what we're really talking about is the risk of an individual person living and thriving in a society that is controlled by corporations, now is no longer has a beneficent federal government that has a government that's maybe going to come after you. It's like big risks. Now I understand why people are keeping their heads down.
Well,
they don't want to.
If they're coming for you, you might just as well be ready for it, and you might as well be ready to swing. And the further they retract, the more ground they're going to have to make up later. And I say we, the more ground we are going to have to make up later. Our focus on the needs of the LGBTQ community, the circumstances in the military, those are absolutely real. but they're not the only community that has problems. And the fact that we don't all, that every group isn't backstopped by the next group, because in the end, we all want the same single thing: human rights. We all want to be treated equally. We all want to be
All want
acknowledged. Yeah, we
And the
all want.
reality of our country is we're just this huge group of groups of minorities that make up a majority. It's a
Yeah,
kind of an odd sort of situation that we have so many languages, so many shades of skin, so many sexual orientations, so much. We have this huge variety. And the strength of our country, the strength of our country used to be that was what made us America, is that we
diversity
were
was the point.
diverse.
Yeah,
We were diverse, we were inclusive, and we did believe in equality. And I still do. So, to quote Jasmine Crockett, one of my favorite politicians, fuck them. You got to tune in on that lady. She is not only beautiful, but she is amazing.
she is amazing.
And Al Green
Mm-hmm. And
stood up.
AOC. Yeah, yeah,
AOC.
and it made absolute sense that he did. And it Michelle Wolf had made a point about how all the ladies in the pink suits were basically saying, our pink suits, make our position clear. And it's like, no, I have no idea what exactly it is that you're protesting, which is exactly what she said. And what she said was, what they should have done was they should have had blood packs in their pants, and every minute they should have blown out a new one and screamed, "I've just had a vaginal event." And they should have done that once a minute for the entirety of his speech, because there were like 100 of them wearing the suits. She was like, yeah, you will fill the entirety of his speech with this protest. And I can't argue with her. And it's women like Michelle Wolf and AOC and Miss Crockett who are
And in
they
our
should
past,
be in charge, because they are leading the way,
yeah,
but they're not being allowed to lead. We still have a bunch of old people who are so far behind the curve running the show. And that's another thing about the politics in our country, because it's not just a Democrat thing. We talk about merit. But we don't act on merit. We act on, well, he's been here longest, he deserves a shot next. Doesn't matter that he's incompetent. It doesn't matter that he hasn't done anything the whole time he's been there. It doesn't matter that no one knows who they are. They're next. And it's sad, and it's going to put us in a noose.
well, it's time. It's time to take action. And we look in the past. We look at what Malcolm X did. We look at what the Black Panthers did. We look at what ACT UP did, and all of which I was uncomfortable with at the time. I watched all this. I'm going, oh, no, they're impolite, but doesn't seem to bother me anymore. It actually enlivens me and makes me feel free when I see people stand up and act up. And I thank you for being here, Mitch. And maybe we did our little bit of act up today. We hope you will like and subscribe, or don't like us and subscribe. We appreciate your eyeballs watching us. And if you want to read a book about two men that really bucked the system, get my novel Love and Country on Amazon. See, it's on Amazon, Mitch. Or the movie Love and Country, which is on Tubi and Amazon. And join us for the next one. And if you'd like to be on our podcast and you have a story about the risks you're taking, particularly as an LGBTQ person in the military, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from an active duty person, but it's probably a really scary time for them, right? But we want your stories, and we thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody.